Hey, welcome back. I'm Wendy Campbell, and this is That Independent Streak podcast. Now, today we talk with Lauren Hug, who we have spoken to in the past, but this time we bring her back. She's got her own project, this one called Vulnerable Creatures. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts. It's amazing. It's wonderful. Because we talk about it loosely and we don't dive into the details, let me give you a quick overview so this podcast actually makes sense. Basically, it's a story about a kitten that's injured, the couple that's surrounding them, the parties that all get involved. Now, in this particular case, we're talking about someone who's on the spectrum with autism. And so it involves the court system, it involves the legalities of animal welfare, it involves so many different things. But really, it involves the communication and how our communication has evolved and changed. And as we dive into it, we really start the conversation of what that looks like for us as the United States and how we process our individuals, how we look at the court system. Are we doing it in a punitive manner? Or are we looking at a more progressive manner in such a way that really encompasses all of the different things that we've learned over the last century? It's a really great podcast. I really enjoy talking with Lauren. I think you're going to enjoy it too. If you're watching this on YouTube, please note the first half of the podcast didn't make it. So you're catching the back end. But if you want to hear all of it in its entirety, make sure you check it out where you can find your podcasts anywhere. Welcome to That Independent Streak. Cancel culture. The the world right now is such an interesting place where if I think something and I feel it and I don't like the way that you did it, I'm going to tell everybody about it. We're going to cancel you. We're going to remove you. You don't get to speak. Oh, and don't you dare defend yourself because I have already validated my thought process with my experience. So, my question to you is in a situation, especially like this one, or, even in the legal profession or in life, cancel culture has become so dominant. How do you, as a litigator, and I know you're not practicing right now, but how would you go forward and how do you combat? Because basically what you are talking about is that person's instinct, their experience, and their perception. And I'm not a fan of cancel culture. I don't know if you know this, because I think it's too judgmental. I don't know that we know enough about anything happening in the world to be so clearly destroying lives the way that we've been doing over the last few years.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. I mean, that goes back to like having concepts of grace or understanding that under certain circumstances, you might very well have done the exact same thing and that you don't really know why somebody did a thing, or you don't even know if
Hmm.
the thing was done. Like,
Right.
sometimes you don't even know really if that was even actually a thing that happened. I don't know, like the legal system, I don't have no idea. I mean, it's one of those things where it's set up so that you are trying to avoid anybody who has those instincts. And the idea is that if you have those experiences, you're not rational or not capable of being rational in a situation similar to yours. I don't know that that's true.
I don't know that I
I
agree with that.
and it, that's again like every inference we can make, there's a countervailing inference that could be the other argument can also be made.
Hmm.
And so that's what makes it really challenging, is that just because somebody has had an experience and has strong feelings about it, they might be more likely to be able to tell whether something really did happen or didn't than somebody who has no experience. I mean, and it's just, I think when you start getting down to all of these assumptions, you could go, well, wait a minute, I could see that the other side could also be true. And if what we're doing is making all of our judgments based on inferences,
Hmm.
well, then it just comes down to who is the person making the inference. And then it goes right back to being a biased prejudice system. And I mean, I think when we talk about systemic biases, there's some, yes, but also there's individual, like our systems are run by humans,
Right.
and humans are humans and they have their preferences and personal experiences and all this other stuff. And so like that, there's no way to overcome the fact that we're humans. So I think that we need to build more, like, instead of pretending like we've got these really rational, um, these very fair process systems, and that, that they're neutral and they're, and start recognizing that no, people people are putting the inputs into them and people are executing the outputs. And so we're only as good as with and it's not that it's a good or bad person thing. It's just we have different ways, we have cognitive biases, we have preferences, we have any number of things that cause us to think. And just back to your tiger analogy, there's a reason why we've developed that. There are times and places when it makes us much, much safer. But there, I mean, it's the more we know about cognition, the more we know about how we make decisions, all this stuff that we were taught and everything that our systems are built on is not right. Like rational economics isn't real. Behavioral economics is much more interesting.
Right.
Like we don't make rational decisions almost ever. We make emotional decisions most of the time. And then we say that we reason why we made the decision. We come back after the fact and we say, here is the reason why. And you can give great analogy, I mean, analysis of why you made the decision, but fundamentally your gut made the decision and now
Mm-hmm.
you backed it up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we were more honest about that, we'd have a lot more interesting conversations about, hey, okay, so if it really is going to come down to I see it this way and you see it that way, do we need to have more councils? Do we need to have more? I mean, I don't know the answers to some of these things. I do think that most of the time, and this is probably a controversial statement, but I think juries tend to get it right most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you put a bunch of people into a room and force them to hash it out, they tend to come up with pretty decent results. Not usually for any of the reasons necessarily that the legal system says they're supposed to, but that that collective wisdom does have um, some value for
Right.
sure. Uh, but then we also have rules about what they can hear and can't hear, and you know that could change how they would figure something out. And so it's I don't know. These are really really hard
I
questions.
know.
One of
I
my
think
friends asked me, she's like, "What would you do differently if you were going to make this?" I was like, "I think the biggest thing I would say is we need to move away from a punitive approach into more of a well, you could call it rehabilitative, you could call it I'm blanking completely on the word that's restorative.
mm-hmm.
But an approach that says that you anybody going through the system is still us, like part of us, and that we need to do that more than othering them.
Right. I think that sounds that actually it may tap my community gene a little bit, but I feel like if we moved in that direction, there would be less people who feel less than. And I think that you know, I think of all the people that I know of who have gotten into trouble early, had problems in high school, early 20s, even early 30s, and that change shifted how they perceive themselves because they were then cast into a different mold and they were part of that system. So in doing that and being more restorative and being more communal, maybe I'm getting old, which is totally true. But I think that healing opportunity there is more impactful on a global scale and more impactful within the community because then we're not punishing, we're helping. And it
Yeah.
seems so much kinder that kindness, it just seems like it would grow a little bit more. And I think part of, the general space of where I've wanted to be involved with people and within the community is hearing the stories and giving people a chance to talk, but also because that healing I think is something that's really missing in all of the banter that we have right now. We have very very strong opinions about who's right and this side and that side and tear it down and get rid of them and you're wrong and you're out and it just seems so contrived and controlling and mean and all the other C words that I can't use, but you know what I mean? Like it just seems like it's so damaging.
Well, I mean, you mentioned cancel culture, and like if you're going to have a community, you have to welcome back in the people that you don't like, or the people that destroyed it a little bit, or whatever you think is happening. Because otherwise, you are just pushing them out, and then you have this us versus them, and walls, and danger, and this fear of people that were once us
Mhm.
and could still be us, right? And I think a lot of the tension, and this is me being big level philosophical again.
This is my favorite. Keep going.
I think we come from a world where the dominant views were that there was a right answer and that it was rationally discoverable. And if you just had the best evidence and the best argument, other people would figure it out. And if they didn't figure it out, then they're bad, or they don't want to be part of the community, right? There's something wrong with them. And I think now we're discovering, oh, wait a minute, that's not actually true. There's lots of versions of what's going on out there and all sorts of different perspectives. And so if there is only one right answer, then it's easy to say, okay, yeah, you're bad, you're wrong, and I don't want to have anything to do with you because you're corrupting the right answer or something. It's a lot more complicated to go, okay, there's a whole bunch of answers out there, and we're going to have to somehow find the common thread or agree to disagree or whatever it is. And so the punitive approach we used to take because we thought there was a right answer doesn't make sense in a world where we're like, maybe not. And maybe some of the things that we thought were the right answers created some really bad conditions for some
Right.
other people who were outside of the right answer group. And that's how, I mean, that's a really hard thing to deal with because you don't want to be like, I'm one of the I caused this, or I'm part of the people that caused it. Like that's hard, and it happened hundreds of years. I mean, it's just this whole complicated thing where it's like, okay, but we're here now, and how do we solve that? And so I don't even think we realize half the time that we're living in very punitive systems,
Hmm.
and that they were designed they were literally designed to punish people who didn't fit the norms. Like that
By
is
people who
what
were not normal, in fact,
right.
in most cases.
Yes. In
Yeah.
fact, you were defined as not normal if you didn't want to acquiesce to the rules, right? That's how
Right.
you knew you were, I mean, and that like that's just the reality of where we come from. And so, okay, knowing that, well, maybe we need to be a little bit more aware that some of these rules were designed for the purpose of keeping some people it out
Right.
or vilified or whatever it was. And it's not that any of us made those up. It's just it's built into the DNA of the system at this point. And so we have to start being aware of it and start trying, like, back to what you asked at the very beginning. If 1 in 44 people are on the spectrum, then we all need to have a lot more awareness about what that looks like and how to communicate or interact, and just be more aware that the assumptions that we make aren't going to work. Like basic community, like I would say basic, but it's not. We assume people know what we mean when we say certain words. We assume we're talking about the same thing
Hmm.
because we're using the same words, but we aren't necessarily talking about the same thing. And being willing to say, could you tell me what you mean when you say that so that I can better understand where you're coming from or what you mean? Being willing to have a little bit longer and more in depth conversations is really important because it's so easy to assume you know what somebody meant and get offended or get frustrated or go off and then like realize they didn't mean that at all.
Right. Right. And then you've ruined your day, your own day, by
Yeah.
thinking that you knew what they meant. And yeah.
And they
No.
didn't mean it at all. And that's I mean, people talk about we used to have a common um language, a common story bank, and now we don't. I'm like, I'm not sure that we really did have as common of these reference
I think
points as
we
people
may
think.
have. I think we may have when we were in clans. So when we
Oh,
go
way
back
back when. Yeah.
way back, like I mean, you think about it. So I grew up in a small town. The small town we have a similar language, but even my small town was pretty large, right? So if I find people out in the world that are from I grew up in Pueblo. So if I find people who are out in the world who are from Pueblo, we have a commonality and we understand like we can there's a kinship, right? But now everyone's in the cities, and we've all grown to these massive cities where Denver is the size of it feels like Phoenix and LA at this point. And everybody's here. So there's all these different tribes. There's all these different nuances that we don't get. But there's got to be a way without going back to the small town in order to build some sort of deeper community within, or at least some deeper connection, because I feel like, as I get older, I find that what I really want is the connection. That's what I really want to know. That's probably why I ask big, broad questions that are really, high level, because I want to know deeper what's in your head and what your heart feels. I don't want I could care less what the weather's like, and you know what I mean? I want to know more.
Superficialities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not something I'm good at. I want to connect, because then I feel like I've done something it's, it's almost like a soul connection. You know, you get a little spiritual bump from it. You feel a little bit better about the world. You feel connected. And I don't think there's enough of that going on because everybody's in tribal mode right now. And it's one of the things that I hope as I get older that I can start bringing more people into a closer tribe because I also, get into my day and driving down I-25, I'm doing my own thing. I don't care what your world is. I got my thing to do. I don't, you know what I mean? And we lose that. We lose that connection and that closeness that really I think, if somebody in the tribe did something wrong, ideally you correct the problem and then you bring them back in and love them, because that's part of you too.
That's what we do with us.
Right.
What we do to them is
Mm,
kind of right. Like,
the other tribe.
and that's the issue is how do we get past us versus them and realize it's all us? And that right there tells you how you can almost always predict what an outcome will be is does somebody see it as an us or a them? When you see the person as an us, you give leniency and grace and you see their point of view and you understand what they were going through and you want them to have you want to be able to welcome them back in and forgive them and all those things. If it's a them, you are like absolutely not. They should have known better. You don't see them as somebody that you understand and that you empathize with because they're a them. And depending on which of our identities get activated, that's what we can see it. And there's an author, I cite her a lot in Digital Grace, Amanda Ripley. She's a journalist and she reported on conflict for a really long time. And she's like, I don't feel like my reporting's making anything better, kind of to your point, right? And so she wrote a book called High Conflict, and it's just investigating like why do we get so deeply entrenched in these things and how do we bring ourselves back into community with them when they're really us.
Hmm.
And a lot of it had to do with complexity and being willing to perspective take and but it's I think it's a challenge for our time because we are now we are connected. I mean, we are going to run into people at the grocery store because our grocery store isn't our little tiny neighborhood grocery store usually. I mean, there's big ones, there's small ones, or we're going to see them online, or I mean, even if we don't interact with them, we see their stories on TV or in something we watch. And so we are now having so many more touch points with people that aren't us that we have to start figuring out how, like what our commonalities are, because we're all occupying this globe together and we are networked.
Do you think, and it just hit me, so I'm going to process this out in the question, but do you think that part of the reason that we're feeling so tribal, because it does seem like the world in general, not just, in our small communities, but literally the world seems extremely tribal right now. Do you think that's coming from the fact that we've recently, in the last 20 years, had more awareness of everyone else and it's like a panic button. So because we're now more connected, we see more people, we interact with, you know, people in Zimbabwe where we wouldn't have before, and it's instant. And so in that development, that emotional and psychological development of awareness, which it was all conceptual before. When we were kids, we had to eat all of the food on our plate so the kids in Africa had food. You know what I mean? And they were like
Right.
this other thing on TV with Sally Struthers. Like it was not perceptual. It was not something that we could in our little minds perceive.
Right. We
And
weren't
now
talking
we
to people
have
then.
to.
Yeah.
Now we have to because in that minute, there the earthquake in Turkey and Syria is a really great example.
That,
That happened in real time. We knew about it in real time. They needed help in real time. And there's no, well, maybe, you know, mythological people. We know, and I
yeah.
think that's overwhelming. And by that, suddenly this is my theory. People are panicking, and so they're going more tribal because tribal is safety, and including everybody is overwhelming. Does that make sense? Or
Yeah. No,
I
I
don't know.
totally,
I haven't totally
no, I
baking that
think,
one as we go, but
no, I definitely think that that's one of the things that's happening and that, we know who we are based on looking at other people. Like that's, I know that I'm me because I'm not you, right?
right.
Like Wendy is this and I am this. And not that it doesn't have to be a negative thing. It's just that's how we can figure out that we're different from other people because of the things that we uniquely are us. But then there's a negative connotation to it that's like then they're the not us is bad versus just not us is different. And I think you use the example of we had to clean our plates because the kids in Africa, right? Well, if we grew up thinking that, and now you're watching the kids in Africa feel sorry for the kids in America who are sitting through school shooting after school shooting after school shooting, that is going to shake your perspective because we're used to feeling sorry for other people. We're not used to them feeling sorry for us.
Right.
We're the ones everybody's supposed to want to be. I mean, I'm talking specifically American. And that we're realizing that that's not how everybody perceives us. And that's hard. That's a new piece of information to take in about, and that can challenge our identity of, oh, if we're not always the generous ones and the ones that are the leaders and the ones that are like, oh, we might not actually be all the things that we thought we were. Uh-oh. Like either we just shut them off and they're stupid and they're wrong and we can't deal with them, or we have to go through some identity crisis. But so yeah, I think there's that. I think that's one factor. And then I think you look at Gen Z and they're like, this is awesome. We're connected with the whole world. Yep, cool. We don't need all those categories. Cool. Like they just have a whole because they've always been networked. Their entire experience has been everybody can talk to everybody, and like there's this fascinating studies now on like something like 70% of Gen Z watches things with subtitles. They always have the subtitles on, and it's because one, they're more aware of inclusivity generally. So there's been a push by TikTok to be inclusive and make sure that deaf and hard of hearing people are included in this platform. So that's one thing. But two, they don't draw distinctions between where the content comes from. They'll watch the Korean drama and they'll watch so they have to have the subtitles to understand what they're watching. But that's a globally networked population who isn't making cultural distinctions based on what they're watching. That's new. That's technology. There were always, there was always that one kid in your high school that was into like something foreign.
Where is that? Well, there was a foreign exchange student, and then there
Right. There
was
was
your pen pal in some foreign country who was also probably dating you very deeply.
right.
There was a lot going on, but yeah, to your point, like it was it was not nearly what it is now. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to be, 15 in today's world.
I tell my kids all the time, like I seriously think Gen Z is almost like a evolution of the species. I don't know how to explain
We're
that.
gonna
Like
find out. And
that
then
they have their I bet, I mean, I'm sure we're gonna start seeing more and more studies that they make so many more neural connections. Like, I don't know, do you ever talk about memes? I can't remember what ages you're.
we do. I have one that is a very, how shall we say it, very engaged memer. At one point, that was how I identified if she was alive because she's older, so she's out of the house. How many memes has she posted in the last hour? Okay, cool. She's fine,
Yes.
right? And then I've got
Yeah.
an 8-year-old who lives on YouTube
Uh-huh.
and a 26-year-old who's on TikTok all the time. So it's crazy, like, and their perceptions of the internet are all just a little bit different, which is interesting too.
We
It's
considered it
fun
different.
to watch
Yeah.
because I thought I was original, internet, being on Facebook in 2009 and MySpace, that was very cool, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's crazy to me how it's evolved, but even more so, you think about Neuralink and you think about, all of the information that we're getting right now that is, to your point, like even with chat GPT, is that what it
GPT,
is?
yeah. Yeah.
We were playing with that the other day.
Yeah.
Even with that, we're jumping and we're jumping and we're jumping, but we're jumping so much faster than we ever did in our lifetime that I can't imagine. I honestly, in like 10 years, I have no idea what to expect.
No,
None.
and I think that level of humility and curiosity is what we need to be approaching things with, is that I can't remember what I was reading, but like that sometimes like what is very likely to happen and is already happening is that countries or societies that were technologically lagging are actually going to leapfrog
Hmm.
the ones that were slightly more advanced because they don't have to go through like the idea of being able to skip all over VHS just straight to digital or something, right?
Right,
Like
straight to streaming. Right.
Yeah, right. I mean, because VHS was like what? I don't know, 10 years maybe? I actually don't know, 20.
Like 20,
Um,
like 20 years ago, we had Blockbuster.
but it was like a blip. Like we
Hmm.
don't, and we would never go back to it because it was an evolutionary step to get to streaming. And so some societies are just going to skip all that and go straight to the AIs and the whatevers and be able to manipulate them in ways that are meaningful for human flourishing. Because I don't get into like the super negativity. I think most of these things are tools and it like figure out how to use them to make the world better. Um, please don't use them to make the world worse. But like I think about I look at Gen Z's memeing and I'm like my son was trying to explain one to me and I'm like it was so many layers of information coded in this one image. And I was like the only thing I could really relate it to was like back when everybody used to watch Saturday Night Live and you would know the one catchphrase and everybody you'd say it and everybody would know it and they'd laugh. But that was like
What's
one
up?
catchphrase, right? Like it's
Hmm.
this much information. And their memes are like this. And like what they have to know to be able to understand it blows my mind. I'm
Hmm.
like,
It's
that
almost like
is,
another language.
yeah.
Definitely.
And it's so much information coded in their brain. And I'm like, okay, clearly you are processing. Like, so my son watches, he listens to his lessons at 3 to 4 times the speed that he has them read. He has a thing that reads them to him 3 to 4
Hmm.
times the speed. He watches videos on 2 times the speed, and he can tell you everything he heard. I'm like, I can't do that. That's just like my brain doesn't process that fast. Um, and I don't. I mean, it could be because of autism. I don't think so though. I think that he's just that. My daughters, both of them, can just take in all this information and be able to tell you meaningfully what they heard. Um, so I do think our brains are changing and we're gonna see, and it makes sense too, right? Because if you're a globally networked generation, you are gonna have like less boundaries and less ideas of strict categories because you're gonna have seen so many stories that are similar but different that you're gonna have this whole library of experiences that you can access that makes you see the world in a totally different way than somebody who only has 5 of those stories to access. Like,
Right.
and
Right. I mean, it's true. I mean, you think about, I keep going back to when we hit this jump, there's this, I think, personally, this is just kind of my theory on it. I think there is an evolution that we're in the middle of, like, and it's not a long evolution. This is like a leap evolution, but I think that there's different phases of people who are going through at different speeds. And so in some cases, yes, your Gen Zer is going to jump through that hoop and move on to the next thing. You've got your Gen Xers who are a little bit, okay, like with that button. And then you've got,
right.
like your boomers who are like, mm-mm, not going, not doing it. But there's also, I mean, even if we got out of the demographics of it and we got to, there's different layers of mental awareness and self-perception and self-realization. And through those different layers, like some people are gonna get there and it's almost, and I am not at all a scientist, so if I offend anybody, like we should just jump there. But like you think
Grace,
about
grace for all
the
of this.
thank you, please, Grace. I'm just a crazy woman talking.
You're
But you look at like the Neanderthal, and now we're finding that there's different layers of Neanderthal. Like it wasn't just like one guy slept with one girl and boom, we changed species, And so I think that's kind of what's happening is because of data and because of awareness and because of communication and connection one, I believe deeply in like community connection, like a mental, like I feel like we raise each other. So rising tides, the more one person learns, the more we all learn. So I'm a big fan of everybody learning a lot, but I think that that this wave that we're on is going to be very, very interesting to see the other side of. We probably won't, but like looking
yeah.
back, it's going to be really cool.
I think and it's yeah, I think it's interesting to think like what it would look like like 500 years from now, what somebody looking back
Hmm.
to this time. And I think a lot of it's just going to be a blip. Like it
Well,
won't even be important.
you
Right?
think 150 years ago we hadn't even hit the Industrial Revolution. And here
That's
we are like communicating we're a step away from teleportation. And it's just kind of like we figured out the large caldera cauldron. Yeah, I mean, we don't even know what we know. And that's what I think is exciting right now, is that we don't know what we know. There's opportunities to learn all of these things and to incorporate all of these things. And then we've got these archaic systems that we kind of have to slowly bring back in and kind of refilter and, whitewash and then move on.
Yeah,
It's
I think that's the part. I think all of this possibility is so exciting and positive, but we have these remnants that aren't, and but they're very much impacting our current existence. And that in some ways I'm like, I have no idea how to fix it, and in other ways I'm like, I think it's just going to take care of itself. Because I mean, I was thinking about an author and people have issues with him, so I'm like, well, okay, I'm still going to say it, but
oh
like,
no, same.
um, I never can pronounce his name right, but the last name is Harris, I think. He wrote *Sapiens*, and his follow-up was *Homo Deus*. And his basic theory is that we are the product of collective storytelling. I'm going to summarize it incorrectly, so give me grace on this one. But essentially, that as soon as we stop believing in these things, the new thing becomes the thing. So, like, all of our systems are just like imaginary, really. I
Right.
mean, the only reason why we all believe in money right now, but we might not believe in money at some point. Um,
You just made the argument for cryptocurrency.
Right. I mean, exactly. There's going to be a whole nother wave of something at some point, right? Um, and so that when enough people change their beliefs, things change. And that is, to me, an interesting theory that you can see for real in like microcosmic examples, but also what happens when you start having it on a global perspective. And I just finished reading a book. I loved it. I think you'd love it. It's called The Web of Meaning, and it's by, I want to say, Jeremy Lent. And it explores the idea that we really we are part of a living ecosystem in the earth, right? But we've chosen not to behave like that for a couple hundred years now. And the internet could be the emerging of like a global consciousness, and could be as much of a leap forward as the development of language, because it connects and enables fictions and myths and things that unite people across boundaries, across frontier. Like, it's just, I'm like, I don't know, that's pretty interesting, because when you think about it, the way that we get stuff done as humans is that we all buy into the same thing. Like Harari, that's it. The last name is Harari, sorry. Um, he uses the example of that people like Catholics who've never met each other, who live across the globe, can all both contribute to an orphanage or a charity or whatever, because they believe in the same reason why you would do that. So they have a shared belief system
Mhm.
that transcends language, geography, ethnicity, whatever. And when we have those unifying belief systems, that's when we can do like some pretty substantive different things. And now that we have this globally networked, like, mark, I don't even know what to call it. I mean, I
Right.
have no
No,
idea
I
what it's going to be.
I think it's the physical nature of the global consciousness that we already have. So it's the physical proof, because I believe honestly, and have for many long years, believe that we are all connected. I think that, whether you believe, it's like when you get that feeling that something's wrong with a friend, and
Yeah, yeah,
and it's not just intuition, it's just awareness, I
yep.
think. And so I think, to your point, we are so connected now, that we're connected so much broader and deeper than we ever have been. I think literally that is the tangibility of the global consciousness.
I love that that's what you said, because I think I actually wrote a note being like, this is just the physical manifestation of what we've already
Right.
like. And I say that coming from like a background that was never, I don't mean this dismissive, like woo woo in any way, right? It was very scientific rationalism. And I think we've limited what we've allowed ourselves to know and experience by requiring everything to be scientific. And I don't mean to dismiss that at all. Like, science is extremely important and gives us all sorts of very important information, but it also omits a whole lot of other ways of knowing and being. And yeah, like when you talk about things like your intuition, or I mean, any of the things that fall into the like, I don't know if that's real kind of space. It is real. Like, we live our lives based on it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
just because we don't have a formula to explain, I mean, we knew about bioluminescence for forever. People could observe it. They knew it existed. They just couldn't like articulate it in a way that made scientific sense until somebody figured it out, right? Like,
Hmm.
so there could be a time in the future when we can explain exactly that feeling. And what's happening is that waves are following through the, I don't know, the subterranean ecosystem. And yes, your friend messaged you. Like,
Right.
it just didn't go through a cell phone. It went through whatever is the not subcutaneous, subterranean. I mean, what is it? We know
I
that
mean, you
like the
pick your
trees,
layer. I'm going to nod my head and say, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
well,
I
the
think,
trees
but I
talk
think
to
this is
each
true.
other now. Like they talk to each other through their root systems. they
Right.
they
Well, and now they're
send
finding that
nutrients to
trees, and this is going to go into the woo-woo a little bit, but they're finding that trees are actually communicating with each other. So you look at like the aspen trees, they're communicating with each other. We are not so separate from a flora and fauna that we wouldn't also have some sort of means of connection. Like I just don't believe that that's that's even remotely possible.
right.
And we
I
could go
100% agree with you.
this is another podcast that we're gonna have to do because I'm gonna bring you back. I'm gonna read all these books and then we're gonna talk about them.
Oh, you're gonna love them.
But I think that's kind of where we're getting, and I think, to the point of bringing it together, the storytelling and understanding the shared experience really does take us to that next step and really does take us to understanding one another better and making the changes, even if they're small, minute changes within, our personal worlds, enough of those equate to a bigger change, which I think
Yeah,
is
I think you're
where a
exactly
big
because
step.
that's it. We can impact what we're doing in our world. Like that's we can be more sympathetic or we can be more willing to at least let somebody share their experience instead of assuming we know about them because we have this definition of what it means to have been just as involved.
Hmm.
Like that we don't know everybody's story. We can't make these snap judgments. I mean, and that's I think that's the tension you highlighted. There are times and places when you need to make a snap judgment because it's what keeps you safe. And then there are times when if you are already safe, that's when you can open up and ask some questions. And like, if there's no threat to you, that's when you have the capacity to be able to be like, tell me more. And I'd like to understand better. Um, and I
There's
think we
such
should
a
just be better
slowdown.
about distinguishing those.
Yeah.
That we don't always need to be on high alert. There are places when we're not being threatened and we're not unsafe. And those are the I mean, I think I say it in one of my books. Like one of the reasons why I love social media is it gives you the ability to watch somebody else in their own environment. And you don't have to walk over there. You don't have to go to that part of town. You don't have to go into that store. You don't have to like you don't have to physically put yourself in a place that you think you wouldn't be safe for whatever reason. And you can still see the shared humanity happening there. I wish more people would use it that way. Like it was one of my favorite things when streaming, like live streaming became brand new. People just walking down the streets of their
Right.
town being like, there's my mountain, there's my, stoplight. And you're like, cool, I'm looking at a stoplight and I don't know anything about you at all, but I'll watch
But
you
we're
walk
doing
down
it
the
together.
street.
Let's do it together. Yeah.
Don't, I
Exactly.
mean, was it Periscope when everybody's showing the insides of their fridge? I'm like, this is great. Show me more about your fridge person I've never met in real life.
Nobody
And
needs to see the inside of my fridge, but yes.
it was hilarious. And we don't do those. Like, that's one thing I don't like about the
Yeah.
evolution of things like social media. We don't do those weird human whimsical things as much once we start marketing with it or we start
Hmm.
using it to put our messaging out. Those moments were so fun when you're like, I am just exploring a different part of the world with somebody else.
Right. Right.
And
I
this
think
is
we
their
need to get back
normal
to
day.
that. That should be the initiative you and I walk away with is you
Just
and
gonna
I will
walk
start.
around doing
I'm
our
going to do weird things on Twitter, mostly Twitter because everybody's so serious on Twitter and that's hilarious to me. But weird things that nobody cares about. I don't get any attention on Twitter anyway, so it's fine. But weird things that nobody cares about just so we can have fun again because I do agree. I think the world has gotten far too damn serious and I am personally exhausted by it and I would
And
like
I
to go
don't think we're
back
as
to fun.
polarized. I really, I swear, I do not think we're as polarized as people say we are. We are
Mm-mm.
polarized on things that are political and um, sometimes like that fall into political spectrums things, right? But that's actually not even the most interesting thing about any of us.
No.
Like,
No,
that
and
is
I would
not
argue that we're not even that polarized on those things. It's the
exactly.
loud players on the far sides of anything that are usually the
Yes.
ones who are shouting the loudest and then you get little hand raises, but that's what you hear and the more you hear those those yabber yaws, going on and on and on about, this is the way it should be and this is how I feel. And then people think because you see it that you agree with it, and then suddenly you start going into the tribe again. And I'm
Yes.
not
I'm
a
just
fan of
constantly telling
it.
people, like, put the stuff you want to see into the world.
Yeah.
Stop letting everybody else dictate what this conversation is about or what is in these spaces. Show me your art collection. Show me your soccer game.
Yeah,
Show me whatever
anything.
the thing is that make you a person, because that's when I'm like, oh, we actually do. Actually, I have no interest in that, but it's really interesting that
That's not
you
my
do
thing, but
that.
cool. Right.
Right? Like, okay, it's cool that that's your thing. And the breadth and diversity of human beings is so fascinating to me. There's so many interesting
I
things
agree. I
about
agree.
people that if we show, and I think, I don't know, my most recent book, I talk about, like, if we started using our social media feeds as like just our homes, we would have like our travel pictures and a rando poster from a rock concert we went to when we were 18, and like some plants that are maybe half alive and half not alive, and our
Judging.
pets. And like, I mean, it would just be this whole hodgepodge of humans, because very few of us live in a perfectly curated,
Right.
on brand space.
Right.
Right? Like,
And honestly, staying on brand is exhausting. So,
boring.
yeah, it really is. Like, I'm not a fan at all. I think the crazy nuances of people are what I love the most. So, we
So
should
fun.
celebrate that again. So, what is on tap for you next? What are you doing next? I know
I
you've
should
got
have prepared
projects
for that
because I've never
question.
seen you slow down. So,
Okay, let's see. I just launched an audio version of my newsletter. I'm dabbling in audio more,
I love it. I
and
love
trying to
it.
get
You're gonna
audio
get
versions of it.
addicted.
I think, yeah, I might
Mm.
actually. So those are the two things I'm really working on. I have two more books in the pipeline, one on digital leadership and one on digital advocacy, because of exactly what you're talking about. I'm like, we got to stop just shouting at each other in spaces. We got to start being people.
It would
And
be
then
nice.
I'm curious about what a person I know thinks about something. I'm not interested in what somebody who just spouts something
Hmm.
constantly says. So if you want to be if you really want to advocate for something, you got to be a human first.
I think that's fair. I think that's it. Especially now that we've got, and I don't know if you've noticed it on Twitter, I'm sure you have, all of the AI bots that are out there that look like humans and spout like humans, and it's all the chat GBT, but that's terrifying to me because how do you know if you're really talking to a human? Not that we knew
Yeah.
before, but I mean,
The only
now it's
way you
getting crazy.
know is because of the weird stuff we were just talking about. Because a human talks about their weird pet, and a human
True.
talks about their obsession with some rando thing, right? Like a bot is not going to be able to develop. I mean, unless they start programming for that,
Well, I
maybe they
was just
could.
gonna
But
say,
like,
now that you've said it, it's
right now,
recorded, and so
somebody's
now they're gonna start learning that. But yeah, I
right.
get you. It'll
It's
it'll be a slow
possible,
curve.
but like only like I I don't know. I just think it's really hard to create the idiosyncratic nature of humans and the weird things that humans do or are interested in. Like, you can't, the combination of factors of like, this person is a Doctor Who fan, but also a highly competitive soccer player and a mom of four kids. And like,
Is this a
I mean,
self-description? I mean, what are we doing here?
no, I did not have four children. But yeah, like when you start adding up all the things that make a person, there's so many things that go into who they are. And I wish that I think that's the thing that bots are never going to be able to recreate, is that we were so complicated.
Yeah.
Like,
Sorry about that. But yeah, I agree totally. I think that's, and that's where the fun is. I like the dirty, messiness of it all. I
yeah,
think
I think
I
it's way more
think
interesting.
if anything, the more we can shine that and the more we can tell each other stories and be there for each other and connect again, the better the world's going to be. It's just this the shouting is just exhausting to me, and I think that it's not helpful. But I know it's championed because, it's easier to put people into packs and tribes than it is to accept that they might all be just fine.
Well, I think it's buying into that, and I hate to say old world, but old view of that there's a winning argument and there's a winning team and there's a winning side, and there's like,
Right. Right. Not
that's just
everything
not
is high
true.
school football. It's just not. I
Mm-mm.
know.
Things are
I
more
know.
complicated than that.
So how do you take care of you? How do you, I mean, because we've dove through a long,
Yeah.
whirlwind of craziness tonight. But how do you, you've got so many projects going on as a mom and as a professional and as a player in the community. You've got to take time for yourself and roll back. What do you do?
It's hard. That was one of my, I don't usually do New Year's resolutions, but I was trying to be like, okay, I have to start centering myself because I'm getting so exhausted. So I wrote out intentions and I try to look at them every morning. And the
Hmm.
mornings I don't, I can tell I'm way more off. Like, because I'm not centering on the things, it's harder for me to focus on what really does matter. And I have become a lot more aware of like, if I don't take care of my, like, this is the most important thing because this is the only thing I have and I can control. Everything
Hmm.
else is stuff that I'm reacting to, but I can control what I do with myself. So I try to do yoga pretty much every day. Um, and I'm not good at doing like following anything. I just sort of make it up
That's okay.
as I go. I'm really
I
not
thought
great
yoga
at
was about flow anyway, but I know a great yogi. So if you need somebody
yeah,
doing it.
I should check in because I need to learn the things, but then I'm like, I know myself. I won't go to classes. I won't follow routine. I'm like very I'll do it myself. But I have to build things around doing it myself. So I have to schedule time. I had to actually put calendar entries, which I was like, "Ah, I'm never going to do that."
They
And now
actually
I
say
have
that
to.
that works in general. That works really well for following through on anything. Yeah.
Yeah. I finally like I've after years of resisting it, hired a business mentor who's amazing and I love her. She's awesome. And she's like, you have to schedule it. I'm like, I've heard that my whole life and I'm never gonna do it. And now I'm gonna do it because you told me to. So and it does, it totally works. But that's the kind of like just I'm really trying to be more. This is super sounds woo woo, but I'm totally trying to lean into like that fluidity, the connectedness, I mean, for lack of a better word, feminine energy, the things that we've been told don't count, don't matter, aren't important, and trying to listen more to rhythms. And like if I don't feel like if I don't have it one day, like I just can't concentrate, or I'm not, and then I go do something else instead of trying to. I mean, unless I have a definite deadline I have to do something on. I'm fortunate that I can often rearrange my day to do what makes sense to me at that time. But I'm really trying to learn that like intuition
Hmm.
of this is not, there's a reason why it's hard today. It's hard today because I'm not in the headspace to do the thing. And if I walk away and do something else, I might come back and then because I know when I'm on, it goes fast
Hmm.
and it's easy. I know the difference between when I'm in the zone or in the flow or whatever you want to call it. And so those are the kinds of things I'm working on as being a lot more like trying to crowd out all of the expectations and the things that have been put on me by the systems, whatever it is, and be like, what really makes sense to me, and how can I be more flowy?
More you. More you, the essence of you. No, I like it. I'm a big fan of flow and I believe in it too. And I can always tell um when I'm not doing the things I'm supposed to be doing. And when I turn my back on the things that I'm supposed to be doing, I feel it. And so I appreciate that. That's definitely something that I will champion you working on all year long. But it's only February, so we'll have to touch base
I
again.
know you have to check back in with me because
Yeah.
I do. I like in some ways I just need to be reminded sometimes of like, no, this is okay. This is the thing that it's a good thing to do. And yes, I have experience with doing it, and it does make sense because I can totally tell when I'm not
Hmm.
doing.
Well, I make better decisions when I'm there. So it's not just a matter of being in the creative flow. Like I know when I need to get in the creative flow, but it's more of I make better decisions because I hear and intuit more of what people are saying and understanding. And it sounds, I'm sure people who don't feel threatened a little bit by it, but it's like when you're talking to somebody, but you hear more of what's being said from their body language and from their, and it goes against everything we spoke about earlier in the podcast. But like um it's just that feeling of what people mean versus what they say, or what they
Mhm.
do versus what they say in that language that isn't spoken.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I
another thing
think
that
it's
goes
fun.
against what we were talking about earlier, I think that it like that is a deeper level of understanding because you're not just fixating on the words. You're trying to understand the person and their whole existence, right? Like
Hmm.
and intuiting from because there are, I mean, there's all like if we have time to sit there and think, you can pick up on all sorts of stuff that we've been taught to filter out. Like we're not supposed to rely on it, but
We've been told we don't have time for it.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
not important.
It's a shame. It's a shame. That's where all the good stuff is, I think. I believe that that's where the good stuff is, and that's what I want to find. I want to find that more in people and their experiences. And this one's been fun. I can't wait until you do another podcast because I went through it so fast, and then I was
Oh,
like, no, maybe I missed something, and then I went back through, and it's really well done. It sounds amazing, like the quality of the story and all of. I even like the jazzy intro. I mean, that's kind of
oh,
fun
that
too.
was, I don't know if you know this, the music, I mean, I do need to say this was written and performed by one of Matthew, my co-creators, childhood friends,
Oh,
who
awesome.
I'm gonna cry, passed away, I think after we released maybe the first or second, I don't remember, it was somewhere around there, like natural causes, but still very sad. So
Right.
it's really meaningful to have that as that theme song.
Oh, that's kind of
Um,
beautiful though.
yeah,
It's kind of
it's
like
really amazing.
an eternal gift, which is kind of nice.
It is. And
Oh,
it's great. I like it's great. The first time I heard it, I was like, this is perfect. This is it. This is exactly what I mean, I didn't have a vision for it, but Matthew did, and I was like, so yeah. So a lot of that's in memory of him. His
oh,
name's
that's
Michael
awesome.
Johnson.
Michael Johnson. And does he have anything published anywhere else? Was he with a
I
band or
mean, I
anything?
think that his the band was called I should know the band name. We mention it in the credits, and I just can't think of it right now, but the band has stuff on SoundCloud.
Okay, I'll go back.
Some
I'll
of the
go
cover
back and
songs.
pull
Yeah.
that and then put it in my
I
show
know
notes.
Dog is in the name. I just can't remember if it's like Son of Dog or something like that.
There's a lot of bands with dog in the name. I don't know.
Yeah.
That one's
I
hard.
feel bad that I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's in the credits for sure.
Okay, we'll
Or his
definitely pull
name
that.
is, and yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, but
Yeah.
you guys did a wonderful job. And it makes me glad. It was fun to get into and really to digest because it was such a departure from like the Lauren that I know because I don't know you as the lawyer. And so it was like, oh, this is amazing. This is great.
I know. My boyfriend was like, this is a whole different.
I know. So two for the price of one for him. Good job.
He's like he's like you swing between like this bubbly like and then to like very serious and like
Right, and I've watched it. I've seen that happen a few times in conversations, but to actually see it in the hear it in the podcast is fun too. But you definitely it was kind of beautiful to like see this other side of you, and it makes me love all the dimension of you. It's amazing. So
You're
if
the best. You're like a soul feeding person, Wendy.
I love you,
I
uh,
know. We need
we
to like be in person at some point because I feel like it would just be
I agree. I would love to. There's some things I've been talking about that we might have to do, but
yeah,
yeah, I would agree. That would be awesome. Um, and now that it's up on all places where you can get podcasts, right? So it's
yeah.
on
I think it's
Spotify
pretty
and
much
Apple.
anybody. If there isn't one and somebody wants it, we'll upload it there.
It's
You have
going
to
to be in
tell
the show
us.
notes too. I'll put it in the show notes so everybody can get it.
Yeah.
So since we don't know when the next one is, do you have any ETAs on your books?
No, I'm hoping by the end of the year. I just don't know for sure if that will actually happen.
I'm just gonna have to peg you. We're gonna have to talk like quarterly, I think, and then
Yeah,
we'll
that'd be
make it.
great.
I love it. I love it. Awesome. Well, I thank you so much for all your time. I feel bad because I know we could talk all night long.
No, I know. It's super fun. I mean, I'm just like, I just get to hang out with you. So
That's
you
how I
tell
feel about
me,
this too. Yeah, I'm like,
tell me to
this is
stop
just
talking.
good time. No, 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 no. This is good. But we should probably close here and then regroup again in another couple months and then get together in person a few times between now and then. That would be awesome.
So much.
Thank
It's a
you so much for
pleasure.
doing this. Yeah, so I really did enjoy it. I thought it was great. And I'm excited. And I love talking to you because this is like
Because you ask the questions that are hard. Like those are
like
the
I don't
questions that
think
are
of
the
them
most
as
important
hard.
questions.
I just want to know like to me it's like okay, so we have this world. How are we gonna like now that I see this element of it, how do we make the change? Like do we talk about it? Do we walk around it? What do we do with it? And you know, I learn from everything like that, but I also think that the more that we talk about those things, the more that other people learn and grow and
The other people have a whole different way of solving it.
right.
Like I think that I should have said this when we were talking about earlier, but like we don't have to necessarily know how to solve it because somebody else might have a really good answer. We just need to activate them
Right, we just
by
need to put it
telling the
out there.
story or yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
like that I think was one of the hardest things for me to learn coming from a type A background and being like, oh, I don't have to solve everything. Like this is
You
not
would be so
necessarily
good at it though. Yeah, I'll put you in
sometimes I might
charge.
be, but other
Oh,
times I'm like, I don't. I mean, I'm dealing right now with like I really experienced the fact I don't want to be an executive director. Like I don't like being in charge in that way. I like facilitative processes. I like consensus seeking. I like dialogue and conversation. I don't necessarily want to be the one who makes the decision.
I think that's fair. I think it's, I mean, but also I think that you're allowed to evolve. You're allowed to change your mind about what, even if you're good at something, you're allowed to be
We
like,
should have talked
that's not
about
what I want
that.
to do. We should
We
talk about
need to
that.
have so much more room for changing minds.
Hmm.
Like,
I think that's the place where people get stuck the most is that they think that this is the way it is, or this is the way that they've done it, and if they shift now, then that's unacceptable. And
well, and they run the very real risk of losing their people.
mhm,
Like that is the thing we don't talk. Like it is if your whole way of thinking involves this and you change your way of thinking, it's also going to impact a lot of your relationships. And that is a high cost.
mhm,
And we should be a lot more willing to honor that and recognize that, like, it's not easy to just, even if you've changed your mind, it's not easy to announce it. It's not easy to act on it
right.
because you could lose
And
a
it's
lot.
super painful to get kicked out of your tribe. Super
Yeah.
painful.
And
Like,
you're not going to be welcomed into the other one. The other one's going to be suspicious about, well, wait a minute, you should have known this before, or I don't believe you, or it doesn't matter because you weren't good enough. Like all the stuff you did before is still bad. So you lose your people, you don't get welcomed anywhere else. This is not an easy thing to do.
right, right, right. But I mean, why do we have to have tribe? I mean, I
I
understand
know.
why we do, but it just, there's so much, yeah, I could wax poetic on this all night. But
There's so
I
many,
think,
like we need a book. We should just have a book club because I'm thinking I read a book on xenophobia because I thought, well, that's an interesting topic to talk about right now. And it was a fascinating book by like a psychiatrist, but he also uses psychology and history and all this other stuff. And I was like, okay, this is really interesting. And he has some interesting conclusions about why
I
we
would
do the
love to
tribe
read
thing.
that. I actually
Um,
am going to go through, and I still want to read Sapiens. That one is already on my book list.
yeah,
And then the
I've
other
read
one,
it and I loved it. And then I started reading all these other books and they were all criticizing it. And I was like, oh, this is interesting.
huh,
Huh. Okay.
perspective. How about that? I want to read the article that you mentioned too. So if you
Which
get a
one?
chance, the one you were talking about, uh, damn
I know because I throw a lot to like I read all the stuff.
it.
The Web of Meaning? No. Or High Conflict.
High conflict I want to read too, but maybe the Web of Meaning, just the one you were talking
That's a
about where is it a book or an article?
yeah, it's a book.
Okay. Yeah.
The
I
one that's
think
talking about how we're interconnected, like how nature's connected, how we're connected, we're part of an ecosystem, and the global consciousness of the internet. That one.
yes, that one. That one.
That one, I would like kill to do a book group. I've been thinking about this. It's like this long. I'm a fast reader, and it took me quite a while to read through it. And I also took a billion notes. I mean, I think I typed half the book up because it was so it's not there are lots of books I like. I thought Sapiens was fascinating. It definitely changed what I was thinking.
Hmm.
Dawn of Everything, which is another one that I think you'd like, which is fascinating because archaeologists and anthropologists re-looking at our hunter-gatherer myths and being like, actually, we had all these different kinds of societies, and we don't tell those stories because it doesn't fit with the dominant narrative of right now.
Hmm.
And there were
Hmm.
many ways that human beings organized themselves that were flourishing and wonderful and amazing. And we like to tell the story of what we're the pinnacle of achievement. Um, so they're very interesting. But this one, I mean, it took me, I don't even remember, like almost a month and a half to read it and like a whole month to type up my notes from it. And it's one of the most interesting things I've ever read because he starts with like Eastern philosophy and indigenous philosophy about interconnection and being part of
I would
nature
love to
and
read
that
it.
we're not separate from nature, right? That we are, and even to the part of like the idea that we can go colonize another planet is ridiculous because we evolved with our ecosystem as part of our ecosystem. We are not better than or superior to it. We are
Oh
products and
wow.
parts of it. And
Wow. I
it's
hadn't even
really like
like put that perspective in there, but that's, I would love to read that. That sounds,
it's fascinating. And it goes through like self and community. And I mean, so all the stuff you're talking about with tribes and like how we
let's do a book club.
I would love to. I mean, like, it's one that I'm like, and normally I'll process a book and just be like, okay, but this one I'm like, I want to talk to people about this because I cannot say that I have ever read anything in my adult life that has so completely shifted the way I am thinking. I mean, of course it resonates with stuff I was already thinking and kind of interested in, but I'm like, oh, because he cites all sorts of study science, and he's like, we've been taught, the selfish gene theory and survival of the fittest and competition. Is like no, nature cooperates, and if we start talking about that, maybe we have different systems because our systems are all built on competition and dominance instead of cooperation and symbiosis, but ecosystems operate on symbiosis. And
It's
it's like,
true. Oh,
it's just
wow.
like you go, oh, well, that just changes everything. I mean, the things about the trees and the things about, like, I was like, okay, like there's something to this that for whatever reason really deeply resonates with me right now. And it is nothing like what I was brought up with or
Those are the
um
best kind though, because I like it when when new information smacks me in the head. To
yeah,
me, that's exciting. It's I know I'm not right. You know what I mean? Like I know that I have so much more to learn, so it's really hard for me to be like, "Oh, this is it. This is the story. We're going to call it here and
right.
wrap
We
it
don't need
up."
to learn anything ever again.
Nope,
I'm
nope,
done. It's all
nope. And
good.
I don't need to hear your opinion about it because you're wrong.
Right.
I don't believe that and have never subscribed to that. I've always kind of, just appreciated that I don't have to agree with you, but we can have the conversation and something's gonna hit and
Yeah.
it's gonna affect me and it's gonna
It
change
will
me. And
change you in some way. It might
right.
not be that you completely do a 180 on everything and are like, yes, you're 100% right about everything. I completely agree with you now. But
And
it's still
even if
saying
it pisses me
something.
off, then at least I can investigate why I got triggered.
Right. Like that's to me, I'm like, oh, I'm obviously having a reaction to this. So there must be
Sometimes
a reason that's bothering me. But what I really loved about this book, when I think you'll like it too, is he actually has a hopeful vision, right? Like he has a where do we go from here?
oh nice.
And it's real to me. I'm like, okay, I can buy in. Like that is a thing we can do. And it fits so much in what, like, he's talking about it in a more systemic approach, but like it's very much what I'm talking about with, like, we can change the conversations that are happening by putting different conversations into the space. And you're just dropping the pebbles in the water and the ripples go out. And yeah, I'm just one person, but I can still, like, impact my little corner of the internet and make sure that my corner isn't mean and yelling and tribal and like, and who knows, a couple people might pick that up. And he uses the analogy like that. He says something towards the end about, like, an avalanche. They'll say that it was this one thing that started the avalanche, but in reality it was all the shifting stuff that created the conditions for the avalanche to occur. So every small action is still creating the conditions for the big shift that eventually comes, and so that everything we do is meaningful. So I'm like, that's
That's
hopeful
a
for me.
completely different message than most people get, and I think, yeah, it is hopeful. It's good. It's good.
So let's read that together.
Okay. No, I totally will. I will, tell me the name of it one more time, and I'm gonna
The
write it down.
Web of Meaning. I can't remember what the subtitle is. It's long.
Hang on, I'm gonna do an Amazon search real quick.
It was in 2021, and I think he's working on another book now. He's also interesting because he was like a .com founder and then just like went a whole different way.
Okay. Integrating science
That
and traditional wisdom to find place in the universe. Why don't you have this on audiobook for people who drive all the fine. Fine, I'll get the hardcover and I'll go with it. Cool.
I'm like half inclined to make my children read it.
I
I know
mean,
they hate me.
I am a big fan of like when I find a book, I want everybody to read it.
Yeah.
Just so I can talk about it. I'm gonna get it for Valentine's Day. Um,
I'm that way with some books and then not other, like this is probably the first one that I'm like, I really want a lot, but only, I mean, I wouldn't say only, I would love everybody to read it, but I was thinking strategically about who do I know that would actually really dig into this, because it's not lightweight. Like it's definitely something that somebody would have to want to spend some time with. Um, and not everybody wants to do that with some of these things, but I know that these are the kinds of things you think about.
Definitely. I wonder if we should let me get into it a little bit, but I wonder if it's that heavy. like in theory and concept, if maybe we shouldn't try and read it and then, read a few chapters and literally book club it. So like read a few, do a
That's what I was
podcast,
thinking.
read a
It had to be
few.
incremental
Yeah.
because I spent a fair amount with just the first chapters are kind of focused on you. And I was like, oh, I'm going to change a bunch of stuff based on this. Like the intentions came from that book. I've heard about them forever. I never thought to do it, but he pulls all the science about how they actually change things. And I'm
Okay.
like, okay, I'll do
Okay.
it. I believe that that's a real thing now.
And
I don't know that
are
I,
you done with the book or are you still reading it?
no, finally finished it. It took me a while.
Okay. Okay.
But I mean, like,
You
it's
might
not
have to
like
reread it a
depressing
little bit, right?
heavy.
No. I
Yeah.
just am trying to like I'm trying to like map it in my head, but I don't know how big it is yet. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
we'll figure it out. But I would love to do that. I think that would be great fun. And it's
That'd be
easy
awesome.
because it's just two people talking about it and
Yeah.
yeah.
That'd
Okay.
be so much fun. Yay. Okay. I'm gonna
I
let you go to
mean,
bed.
I love you. I had to stay up all night for you, so it's fine. But I love you. Thank you so much for doing this
Yes.
again.
Oh,
And
thank you for inviting me. Thank you for listening to the podcast because
oh,
I
that's
want so
great.
many more people to listen to it, but I'm not great at promoting it because it feels selfie promoting. I don't like that, but like I do think it matters.
Did you ever hear from Gina Cavalli? I think that's how her last name goes. She has a son who's autistic and she's running a podcast, but she used to be at KKFM for
Oh,
years
interesting. Yeah.
and is moved to Austin or no, Atlanta. Um, so I had put her like I tapped her on that post, but I'll reach out to her and see because I mean I think it's done so well that it should be heard on a larger space and promoted larger. And I think if she's, working that angle, I think that's an interesting angle to tie it to. And,
Yes.
anyone in criminal conversation is a good person to tie it to. And
And I have a list of like, I mean, I've talked to a lot of, of course, I have lots of smart friends that know this stuff, but I'm like, I realize I'm learning a lot about myself. I like making the thing. I don't like promoting the thing.
mm,
And once I'm done with a thing, as you can tell, I'm on to a new thing
mm-hmm,
and then making the new thing.
mm-hmm. No, I
And
get it.
so I I almost like we toyed with talking to a publicist, we toyed with a couple of different ways of looking at it, but yeah, I'm like, so any idea, I should just get on the promotional thing and do it because I can.
I mean, you can
But
start it
like
easy though. I mean, there's no reason why it has to be a ton of effort. I mean, it's just what it comes down to is, how much momentum do you want and how fast do you want it?
but then I don't know the answers to that because when I'm talking about that flow, I'm like, for some reason, when I sit down to do that, I get this like for me, from
You
myself.
have
I don't know
problems with
why.
self-promotion, don't you?
Huh?
Do you have problems with self-promotion?
Kind of. I mean, like I'm not opposed to it. It's just more like it doesn't interest me. I guess
Oh,
is a
that's
better way to
fair.
put it.
That's totally
I'm
fair. I get
like,
that.
it's not, and in this particular podcast, I very much believe it. I mean, I believe in my books too, but like I I would much rather talk about you and other people and things like that. That's what happens to me every time I go to a networking thing, right? Like I forget to even tell people what I do because I don't actually care. I'm much more interested in the other people. Um,
I totally
so
get
that,
this. Yeah.
yeah, it's just like, so as I move in, like one of the reasons I hired a business mentor is because it was like, okay, I get business. That's not the but if I'm going to put books into the world, and if I'm going to put podcasts, like I have to have a better plan
Mhm.
because that will always be my hobby and my side gig if I don't prioritize it and invest in it. But even after I hired her, she's like, and you just take projects that take all your time. I was like, I know.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
But that's how I'm used to getting paid. I'm used to making money from consulting and contracting. And
Mhm.
it's the easy and least resistance way for me to do it. So it's like, so anyway, I'm going through a whole like midlife crisis about my
This
professional
is a
like
good crisis to have. You can't slow down enough to promote the things that you've done. That's a terrible crisis to have. I mean, all you have to do is literally find somebody to shout on the mountain for you. And like you don't have to do it anymore. Like that it will self-sustain at that point.
that's what I need. Like those are the kinds of things I wanted to put in place is be like, okay. Because I think for a long time I'm like, because I am capable of doing this and I do it for other people, I should be able to do it for myself. And I've been stuck in that should for a really long time, like kicking myself and being like, well, you should just do this. You should just do this. And then I don't want to do it.
Hmm. No, I
I'm,
feel
I'm
that. I do it too. It's funny to me that that we're as similar as we are in that regard because there's so often I'm like, I want to do this and I want to do that, and I'll create these great ideas, but my follow through sucks. So I can, like the podcast, I can get it started and I can do it and I can produce it and roll it. But as soon as we start talking about, how I'm going to monetize it and how I'm going to do then I'm like, I just want to do it.
just
Like
want to
I,
make
I
it.
just want to make it.
And like you
So
see all these other people that did that, right? Like they just made the thing, and then eventually, like in year three, they got 500,000 followers, and then it was monetized. And I'm like, I know that's actually a path. It is actually a path. You just make it, and until like eventually you hit your critical tipping point, and then
mhm,
it becomes a thing. That's not a strategic plan, it's an
mm-mm,
organic plan, but
right,
that's kind of how I think is I told my businessman, I was like, I'm just gonna make so many things that people will start like
connecting dots.
cross-referencing my things, and then one day they'll just go like that. She's like, okay, that's a plan.
It's a
Not a
good plan.
strategic one.
It's not a financially sound plan, but it's a good plan. It's fine.
Ergo, the reason I keep taking the contracts that pay my bills, right? Like
Yeah, no, I get it. I totally get it. Well, we'll
we should
figure it
figure out
out.
like yours too. We'll figure yours out because I mean, I think
Oh,
what you're
there's a
doing
whole,
is
I appreciate that. There is I have a couple of people, so when I went to business school is when we started talking about me doing a podcast. And so
Mhm.
it's tied into about four different plans, that are all contingent upon all of the things, but
Right.
it
So you're doing
starts
the
with me.
compliments plan. Yep.
Yeah. So, but I mean, there's ways to monetize this on a solo project too. So, yeah, we
Yep.
should talk about that. I should
I mean,
just,
I believe in complement strategy. I really do. I think that the more things that you have that tie into each other, that creates the momentum and it's a matter of
it's
getting them
math.
all launched.
It's math. It's shouting, a rifle. Basically, you're shooting out and hitting what you hit, and maybe
I was like,
there's
in
dinner.
3 years from now, when I have 5 digital whatever books and a couple of online courses, then everything will be fine. It's just the in between time.
I know. I feel you. Yeah. Well, we'll stay motivated together. We'll stay on track together. We'll do this book club because I like that idea a lot, and we'll just see what happens.
I love it. Thank
And then we'll
you.
let the professionals plan out how there's money involved. Awesome. Well, you get some sleep tonight because are you working tomorrow?
Actually, tomorrow is planned for like more audio recording for my books. I'm trying to do at least a day, 2 days a week where I'm getting the personal project stuff moving
Nice.
forward. So yeah, I mean,
Nice.
have to go to 8
Cool. Cool. Wow.
dress in real clothes and pajamas tomorrow.
They were like, "Do you want to come in on Fridays?" And I was like, "I'm gonna leave by 2 anyway. Why would I come in? Like that's ridiculous."
What are you doing at like tell me again?
I am director of marketing for a business technology firm. So it is not sexy like it used to be, but I make a hell of a lot more money than I made when I was in
Yes.
radio. So
I have a friend who left newspaper to go do marketing for a business, and he's like, it's boring, but they pay me well.
yeah, like there's money in it. So
He's like,
I
and they
will
think I'm a
continue doing it.
genius. So
I know, right? Yeah. Yeah. I always get weirded out when people are like, "You're really smart." I'm like, "What?"
are really smart. You are.
But
But yes,
I love
sadly,
you.
there's no money in journalism.
No. No. But at this point everybody can podcast. So there's still money in conversation and
Yes.
stories.
Yeah.
And real stories. I think people are dying for authentic right now. And so that's just the route we're going to take. See what happens.
Great. I'm
It'll be
excited.
great. All
Thank
right,
you for
dear.
letting me take
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being a part of it. But well, let's do we're almost to March. Let's plan. When is your spring break for your kids?
last week of March. They're also in online school and
Okay.
like so it's not,
We should plan like the first or the second week of March, like maybe getting together for drinks or something, and I'll come
I would
down
love
or
that.
whatever because I like it down there, and that
Yeah,
would be fun. Okay,
I would love that.
cool. I'll throw some dates out and we'll figure it out.
Cool.
All
Thank
right,
you so much.
awesome. I love you. Have a
You
good night.
too. Really appreciate this. You too.
I'll
Bye.
talk to you soon. Bye.